is now my pleasure to introduce our lunch keynote, Mr. Steve Young. So for those of you that do not know, Steve Young is the president and co-founder of HGGC. Steve serves as the chairman of 5 HGGC portfolio companies, including Idera, Integrity, Dealer FX, Auto Alert, and Innovative. Now, prior to the inception of HGGC and his success in private equity, Steve was a celebrated superstar in the NFL, where his professional career spanned more than 15 years, primarily with the San Francisco 49ers. Steve received numerous accolades, including Most Valuable Player of Super Bowl 14, Sports Illustrated, and Sporting News Player of the Year from 1992 to 94, and the NFL's Most Valuable Player for 1992 and 1994. When he retired, Steve was the highest rated quarterback in NFL history and had the distinction of being only one of the only one to win 4 consecutive NFL passing titles. And in 2005, Steve became the first left-handed quarterback to be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Philanthropically, Steve founded and chairs the Forever Young Foundation, which is actively involved in children's charities around the world and has been a former international spokesperson for Children's Miracle Network, which has raised over $1 billion to benefit children's hospitals. Kevin, Sick Kids team, I hope you're listening. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome to the stage the one and only Mr. Steve Young.
Kind of I think that was my mother's version. I appreciate that. It makes me feel very special. Could you come home with me and tell my kids that I've actually done something in my life? No one at home, right? No one's appreciated. I have to make the connection, right? Because I played professional football for many, many years, and now I've been in private equity even longer than I played professional football. And everyone retires from professional football and goes to private equity, right? And that's how I'm sure that that's a paved road. Well, I've kind of grinded it out, and I have to thank my dad, who for years, as I started to play, my dream was to be Roger Staubach, the Dallas Cowboys quarterback back in the 70s. He had his poster up on my wall, and that's what I was going to be. I was going to be Roger Staubach. And I remember my dad saying, "Well, that's great, Dad, Steve. That's a dream, great dream, but what's the plan?" And I said, "Well, the plan, I don't know, Dad. I'll probably go to law school, or, And he said, "Okay, great. That's a good way." So then all of a sudden I went pro, and I called my dad, and I said, "Dad, the dream is now the plan. Like, it happened." He says, "No, the average career in the NFL is 3 years. You need to have a plan because you're going to be 26 and out of the league, and you need to go do something. So what's the plan?" I said, well, I think I'll still maybe go to law school, and we'll figure it out. I don't know." And then I played 10 years, and I called my dad and said, "Dad, come on now. The dream and the plan now have merged, right? I mean, at some point, And he said, "No, because no matter what, when you retire, you'll be 40, you still have half of your life. What are you going to do?" I'm like, geez, this guy's relentless. So in the middle of playing, I actually went to law school and started going in 1988, a semester a year. So over 6 years, 6 semesters, graduated from law school in 1994 in the middle of going to 3 Super Bowls. Now I look back and I go, what? Who does that? Grit Young's son is who does that, to have some kind of a plan. And I was so grateful because the transition into private equity was a windy road, but was one paved because my dad kept talking about a plan. What's the plan? And interestingly, I played 17 professional seasons and still needed a plan. And so I kind of tell people that that's a great way to think about it, because now my second career has been longer and certainly even more fruitful and very interesting. And what are the connections? And why do they mix? And why do they match for me? I can tell you that being in private equity is very similar. There are things that I don't like about private equity that I loved about football. Football had a field lined, out of bounds, inbounds, a clock. It had a score. which is wonderful. I mean, having a score at the end of the day, even if you lost, I now look back and go, oh, so grateful there's a score so I can tell people whether we won or lost. Private equity in business in general can be very frustrating because the truth is harder to find. The truth is not hard to find on the field. It's the greatest human laboratory that you can have, because if you pay attention, you're going to see human beings reacting in this laboratory under pressure in front of 80,000 witnesses, and you're going to see the truth. There's never been a game that I finished that I went before the press and they asked me, why did I do what, certain things, and I say, what are you talking about? I didn't do that. That's somebody else's fault. No, we just saw it. We just witnessed it. So the truth is there. Where in business there's a lot of mitigation and a lot of dodging and ducking, and it's tough to actually get somebody that accountability actually hits. It deflects a lot, and that's hard to find. And so I think that more importantly, I've taken a couple of really foundational lessons from playing into my private equity world that give me feedback that's really useful almost daily in how we formed my firm, how we interact day to day, what is our strategy. So much of it is kind of guided by a couple of principles I learned on the field. As a quarterback, and as Canadians, I want to be careful because I know that you know Canadian football, and I should have played Canadian football. Because as a guy that ran around a lot and really loved the open spaces, I can only imagine even more space to run around, and I really missed my Doug Flutie moment, and I would have been great up here. I really feel like we would have been great partners. But as quarterbacks, the ball's in their hands every play essentially, and as you drop back to pass, you're looking to throw to your team, and then there's those moments when, hopefully rarely, that you end up throwing it to the other team, and it's called an interception, and it can be disastrous. Many times, I would be surging towards a victory, comeback, momentum, especially at home at Candlestick Park in San Francisco. It was an older park. It would almost move. It was just, the stands were portable in some places, and people would start jumping up and down, and you could see the whole place kind of surging. And you could feel the momentum that was coming behind this great victory that we were headed to. And then I would drop back to pass and throw the ball, and then I'd throw it to the other team, interception, and then everything would just collapse. I just lost the game. It was over. All this momentum, all this excitement, 80,000 people, your teammates, all invested physically, emotionally, spiritually, like, let's do this. And then one decision that I made just ended it all. And what, over the years, as those happened more and more, I tried to figure out how to handle those in a more effective way. Because originally what I would do is my teammates would turn back, because they had just seen it, right? They've been fighting with me. They're excited to be there. We're going to do this. And all of a sudden, it just, this moment happens and everything just deflates. And there's a feeling that they had, because I'd thrown it to such an obvious place, that they would always kind of underneath everything would say, did you do that on purpose? Because who would throw it to him? Like, honestly. So there's a tinge of that. Underneath their concern about why this happened is a piece of it that says, you seem to be wanting to do this on purpose. And so as the guy that now the lights are on, the team is now turned back to me and say, explain. Everything just fell apart. Why? And so as a human being, I had two choices. I could either turn and run and just go to the car and take off, which is always an option in any business, right? It's like, I'm out of here. But short of that, I needed to explain. And they wanted the explanation. They wanted to hear why. And then I would tell them, you were supposed to turn right when you ran your route. You turned left. And you were supposed to block, and the guy came and hit me right when I was throwing the ball. It's the truth. Look, sun, right in your eye. Look at it. It's right in your eye. And feel the ball. It's muddy and soaking wet. Feel it's slippery. These are all truths. I wasn't lying. Every bit of it had happened. And I was explaining it to them because they wanted to know. Plus, there was a tinge underneath that they thought I did it on purpose. And I'm not going to let them I'm not going to put up with that. I didn't do it on purpose. What are you, nuts? Only an insane person would do it on purpose, and I want you to know why. And I'm going to tell you all the mitigation that explains it. And I would do it as we're walking off the field. I would be telling them, if you hadn't blocked the guy, so we get to the sidelines, and the coach says, hey, they'd walk up to one of the guys and say, hey, what happened out there? And inevitably, they would say, well, he's not Joe Montana. That's the problem, right? That's what's wrong. You think I'm joking. Like, that was the explanation. Like, that's what it felt like to them. How they saw it, what they felt about the mitigation that I just explained to them, that's how they took it. And I thought, that's nuts. Like, why isn't there some collective sense of accountability for what happened? It just wasn't. And I finally realized that the biggest missing piece was me. After about 50 interceptions, about 2 or 3 years in my career, I realized that this way that I'm dealing with this, because it was human nature. You would do the same, I promise. You'd be like, you'd start to explain it and tell everybody and like why it happened. It takes some time to realize that actually doesn't help. It doesn't motivate your teammates, your other human beings that are near you. What helps, that I finally realized, is after about the 51st interception, because it happens, every once in a while it happens again, and they turn to you and go, wait, that one seems super obvious. Did you, be honest with me. Come on, are you just wanting to go home, or is there some problem at home, or is there you have some kind of, death wish? No. And so the 51st time I tried something completely different. When they turned to me and said, why? I just simply said, you know what? The ball was in my hand. It's now in their hands. It's my fault. I'm responsible. That's what happened. But I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to go out to the sidelines, get a drink of water, we'll come back out, and we're going to go down and win the game. What do you say? And those guys walk to the sidelines. Coach asked them, hey, what happened out there? And out of nowhere, receiver said, oh, you know what? I turned the wrong way. And my guy hit Steve just as he was trying to throw. I was trying to block him, and he kind of hit him. I was like, what in the world? What? It was amazing, and it's been proven this is a truth. This is not just a football truth. This is a truth. This is a stake in the ground, absolutely, because I've seen it in 17, 18, 19 years of private equity. I've seen it in business. I've seen it in my marriage. I've seen it in my raising kids. This is true. That when the lights are on and something goes wrong, we all seek somebody to be held accountable. And what happens most of the time in those moments is people duck. And I think it's human nature. Because the truth is there are many mitigating circumstances to every mess up. And they're true. And to be listed seems reasonable and rational at that moment. But it actually doesn't infuse like a big bellows of wind into a system. It does not infuse accountability. It robs it. And without it, no one else will take it. Human nature says, well, I'm not taking it. And you end up with a system of mitigation. And I promise you, that is losing football. Many times I think to myself, you could do this if you follow football at all. And even if you don't hate it, it's okay. At the end of every football game, the quarterback gets in front of the media. He has to go up in a big thing like this, and he stands behind it, and behind it it'll say the team and some sponsor, Rite Aid or something, it'll be like, and they'll have their drop bag, and then the press will be there, and they'll ask him, what happened? You could listen to that, take a piece of paper, put a line down the middle, and put mitigation on one side, and put accountability on the other side. And then just put your ear to the conversation, and you'll hear it. And once you get used to this, you're going to go, oh my gosh, that was mitigation. He just made or oh my gosh, that was accountability. And the guys that are the kings, who are the kings of the NFL? Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, he was another. These guys are masters at this. I mastered it over a period of time, and now I watch the next generation, and I just in awe. Let's take Tom Brady, for example. Tom Brady is now 42 years old. His teammates are 21. I mean, they must look at him like grandpa, and he is married to Giselle. He gets paid 50, 100 times more than his linemen who have to protect him. These dynamics do not lead for you to go fight for Tom Brady, right? Oh, I can't wait to go put my body at risk for Tom Brady. But what happens? Tom Brady collects accountability and forces other humans to be accountable. It's the truth. After every game, when Tom Brady goes before the press, you should listen to it. Put your line down the middle and listen for accountability and mitigation. You will never hear a peep of mitigation about the game. And when Tom Brady stands before the press, who's he talking to? The press? Fans? Who's he rational, reasonable, right? No. Who's he talking to? He's talking to his linemen that have no reason to defend him. Because he wants them to hear his words of accountability. And he's a master at it. You'll never see him find some, especially the tough games when you've lost, when you want to explain the mitigation, when you want to tell people what happened. It's human nature. They just won't do it. Drew Brees the same way. Peyton Manning was the king. Couldn't ever get an inch out of him. Because what happens is they need to collect everybody on their team every week to go back and recognize that there's a lot of screw-ups. There's a lot of mistakes. And how can I build accountability into that system? I got to take it for sure. Think of my marriage. I've been married almost 20 years. Well, 20 years. It's a miracle. How many times have I come home from going to the grocery store when my wife says, hey, go grab something, eggs. Which is on the way, give me 4 or 5 other things. And it's amazing how many times I've come home and forgot the eggs. I got the other stuff. She goes, well, how did you do that? I had to remind myself of the truth that I learned on the field. Because if I would have told her when you said it low and I didn't hear it, and I thought you said begs, or, there's 1,000 things that are true, right? But that's how you get divorced, right? You want to get divorced? Go dive into mitigation. I mean, it's a beautiful place to swim around and end up, alone. I mean, tell you that she after 20 years, she's frustrated, but she hasn't left, Mostly because I learned this important lesson. I try to teach I have a 16 and 13-year-old girl and a boy is 16, and the girl's 13. But 3 or 4 years ago, they fought like crazy. And I actually one day saw my little girl kick my boy. They were arguing about something, and she just kicked him, like bad. I said, Summer, you can't kick him. Immediately, what came out? All the mitigation. And it was true, and it was like a life force for her. It was vital that I knew why she kicked him. It was like, and I go, honey, you got to understand, I don't really care about that. It doesn't matter. You can't kick him. Every time I'd say that, her mind couldn't process it. Because she constantly just telling me no, you don't understand, Dad. You don't know what he did. And she'd list the awful things that he'd done. And I was like, no, honey, you not your. And so a young mind could not process this truth. But in the end, if you say, Steve, if you could have your kids, one thing as a parent, one thing that you have given them as a gift to go out into the world, what would it be? That one thing is the ability to recognize the moment when the lights are on and you've screwed it up. And to say, I screwed it up. But not end it there. But to actually say, I'm going to go fix it. 2 things, simple things. And I recognize this all the time. And private, so how many times have I made this speech inside of our credit committee, inside our boardrooms? Because it is amazing how obvious it becomes once you pay attention. And it's so obvious in your own life. There's so many times I still do that. when I start to list the mitigating factors, that something that happened, and I go, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. After all these years and all these years of knowing the truth, I still do it. And it really holds back systems, it holds back teams, and the teams that are accountable and have infused it are always winning. And the teams that are always seeking mitigation are always losing. For example, just this last week, a young quarterback played a game. They won the game. It was a big moment. They'd been losing a lot. And they'd made a mistake down at the goal line. And they'd jumped off sides. And one of the people in the press said, why did it happen? And this quarterback says, well, we're home and our crowd is too loud. And we couldn't hear, and they need to quiet down. Is that perfect? Did I just make my point? Like, Baker, don't worry about it. Oh, did I say that? Don't worry about it. You got to recognize that at that moment, you say, we screwed it up. I should have been on top of it. That won't happen again. Because the last thing anybody wants to hear is a fan says, oh, sorry, Booker, we screwed it up. We were too loud. You know? That relationship is not building, it's shrinking. Right? And so that's one. That's one of the truths. The second one was, my coach at the 49ers when I joined him in 1987. Sorry, I'm that old. It's criminal. I tell my kids I'm not. Don't tell them. But when I joined them, they had won 2 Super Bowls with Joe Montana and Ronnie Lott and Jerry Rice and Roger Craig, and it was just they were the kings. They were the kings of the NFL. And I joined to take Joe Montana's place because Bill Walsh said that Joe Montana had second back surgery and he wouldn't play anymore. And the only reason I went was so that I would play. If I knew that Joe Montana was healthy, I would have not gone because I wanted to play. I'd rather go to law school than not play. And so my first day there, I remember going out to practice, and Joe Montana came running out, and the first thought I had was, he doesn't look hurt. And that was the next 4 years of my life. That now explains the law school, because I started law school the next year. I was so bored. But that first day, I noticed that there was a camera guy back in 1987, so it was a big shoulder camera, the big thing, and the wired back to a pack that was carried around by somebody else. And this person was filming Bill Walsh. His meetings in front of the team, and then out to the practice field, and then back inside to the lunchroom, and then into the locker room, and then and the whole day, I not only was I upset about Joe Montana being healthy, that was kind of odd to be upset about, but that I was watching this guy with the camera, and I remember thinking to myself, this is odd. I know they're famous, I know they've done really well, I know they're the kings, but is this like, are we building a museum? Is Bill trying to, put together a movie about himself? I was making fun of him. I thought it was odd and kind of ridiculous. Over time, though, I was completely humbled because what I found out he was doing was he was essentially creating a physical toolkit of everything that he knew. He was 2 generations ahead of anyone in the NFL at the time. He was very concerned about building partnership with the players. Everybody else thought players were chattel. 1987 was the year we struck. We went on strike with a picket out in front. And I remember the New York Giants owner at some point said, don't these players get it? They're the chattel, we're the owners. He actually said it. And that's what the relationship was like. That's not a burgeoning, abundant relationship. Bill saw it differently. He saw us as partners. He worried about whether we were sleeping. What was our marriage like? Did we need some help? Mental illness. He wanted to make sure we were eating well. He wanted to make sure that we were hydrated. Back then in 1987, they thought you went in the summertime to get in shape in the desert without water. That's how you got in shape. Bill's like, well, that's stupid. Let's not go to the desert and let's give you water. That's revolutionary back then. But he was amazing. And so what he was doing, and then let alone what he was doing on the field with the West Coast offense, with how he was revolutionizing the quarterback position, connecting timing to the receiver that's never been thought of before. So much simplicity, yet beauty, timing. It made football more of a dance step, more of a relationship, a choreography. And all this, he was so far ahead that's why we're another 10 years past 1987. We went to the playoffs 19 years in a row. 5 Super Bowls. We lost 7 more in the championship game. It was amazing. And he knew it. He knew more than anybody. He was full, Bill wasn't lost about it. He knew that he was great. He knew that he had something really special. And what was his reaction? I'm going to tape everything I say. I'm going to take every playbook that I have. I'm going to take every sense of audio, paper-based, video collection of everything that I know. And I'm going to put it in a toolkit, a physical toolkit. And I'm going to hand it. At the time, the Rooney Rule was not in, what hadn't come to the NFL. The Rooney Rule is that you cannot hire a head coach in the NFL without also interviewing, I think it's 3 minority candidates. And so the idea was that we wanted more minority head coaches. So the Rooney Rule was supposed to be the impetus to get that done. This is before that. But Bill was very focused on his assistant coaches getting head coaching jobs, especially his minority coaches. So he was before the Rooney Rule thinking about this. And what he wanted was to give them every chance to be successful. So he created this toolkit, and as they headed out to be head coaches, he gave it to them. And then he said, which is amazing to me, I'll see you in the championship game. And they went off, and they did come back and see us in the championship game, and we got beat. The Green Bay Packers came back with Mike Holmgren and beat us. And after that game, I went and spoke with Brett Favre, who's a friend, and I want to congratulate him, and it was a pretty painful moment for us, and me particularly, and personally. But I actually thought about, you know what, Brett, what was Mike Holmgren's big game speech last night before the game in the hotel? He told me the big game speech. It was Bill's big game speech. He just pulled it out of the drawer. What's happened since then? Since 1995? Last 20 years. That toolkit's been handed to Andy Reid and Doug Peterson and Sean McVay, and Pete Carroll. I mean, I could go on and on. I'd say 24 of the 32 teams are directly principled on this toolkit. And all the successful ones. But it's now everywhere in the league. And thankful for Bill Walsh and his legacy of abundance, of his sense of what I wanted to share. Who does that? Who has proprietary information in a business that doesn't hold it as tight as possible? I mean, that's the human reaction. That's mine. I witnessed Bill, and my reaction still is like, I don't know if I'm not going to hand that out. That's anti-competitive. But in a spirit of a world that's full of zero-sum game, when all we really do is fight, and all we really do is find out what I get and what you don't get. In that zero-sum game world, nothing ever gets settled. Nothing ever gets peaceful. There's a winner and there's a loser, and we're going to point it out. And the loser never feels satisfied because the nature of the relationship was zero-sum game. I had stuff taken from me. And the winner's always full of hubris because I took it from you. It really defines our political life today for sure. But so much of private equity, every business, is a zero-sum game mentality. I'm in a bunch of negotiations all the time. And I'm thinking to myself, if Bill Walsh was here, what would he do? He would figure out ways to say, that's not important to me. I give on that, not a problem. These are the 4 things that are vital. They have to be. And we can stop talking now if they're not vital, if they're okay, and you're okay with hearing them out, then we're fine. But these are but the other things are not vital. And I'm seeking a place of collaboration. I'm seeking a place of 1 + 1 = 3. And it's amazing to me how many of us, and me included, still spend time in a zero-sum game mentality. And Bill Walsh was the one that showed me that there is not only an abundance for the person who gets the toolkit, who has a spirit of a gift to go be successful, to create a platform for other human beings to find out how good they are, which is the dream. But there's the multi-generational effect. And now I see the NFL. I go Monday nights. Every Monday night I have to be at the game, wherever the Monday night game is, as a part of my job, because our firm now has realized that this is a great opportunity to have a suite and bring in prospective intermediaries and founders and sales, and now I have to do this job. I can't get out of it. I'm stuck. But every Monday night, I have to be in the Monday night game, and we do a pregame show. And I see the teams, and I see the coaches, and I see the ones that are really good. And I can see how they warm up, because Bill had a certain way of warming up in his toolkit. He wanted people to know how to warm up. And almost every team comes out and warms up like Bill Walsh. It's amazing. And so if everybody has it, then what's great about it? Well, if it is revolutionary, if it is forward-thinking, if it is innovative, what it does is it breeds more of the same. And what I love to see is the young coaches today feeling a sense of an innovative spirit that I've never seen in the NFL before, like it. In the NFL in the 1980s, especially the 80s, but less in the 90s, everyone just did the same thing. No one took a chance. There was very little innovation. But now 20 years later, everybody's got a young coach that's very innovative, that wants to do new and interesting things, and it's great for football. It's great for the whole system. And then therefore for everybody else who follows it, right? So that's millions of people. And so the second truth that I try to live by, it's hard, is to live in a spirit of abundance in every relationship. How can I make that relationship more abundant? That could be in someone in the shop, someone in my own firm. How do I build a sense of partnership? How do I build a sense of collaboration? Our whole firm is founded on this idea of what Bill Walsh gave me, because we had seen the battles inside of private equity firms. I was around Bain Capital a lot. I'd seen the fiefdoms that were built inside this partnership, when there really is not a partnership. It's just little fiefdoms of exclusivity, where I have my deal team and my guys, and I'm going to go to the bankers, and I'm going to get the deal, and I'm going to own it, and I'm going to bludgeon everybody else around me to make sure it gets done. And so attribution became the denomination of choice, right? It's like attribution becomes the truth. And so we started our firm foundationally on, we're not going to seek attribution amongst each other as partners. All relationships go in the middle. And then we're going to compensate on excellence. We're not going to compensate on attribution. That's hard. The whole system is built on attribution. But we're fighting that fight to try to see if this is a useful way to think about private equity in a different way. And so far, we're surviving, and it's unique culture inside. All we do is partnership investing, the old school way, like Bain 3 and 4, if you think about the late 90s, where sellers are reinvesting significant portions of the proceeds back into the transaction. We're the biggest check. Pari passu, we figure out a strategic vision together, and we own 100% of nothing. And that's all we do is now 30 platform investments in 12, 13 years. We do partnership. And what I try to preach is this sense that we can do it in an abundant way. Difficult, frustrating, seeming impossible at times, but with a spirit of what Bill did, which I think is amazing. I'm in awe of somebody who is, famous because of his proprietary knowledge, and could be more famous by holding it. and by therefore less famous by giving it away. And then recognizing by giving it away, I'm going to get more competition and could possibly get beat. And did. It's a heck of a thing. Should be a statue for this guy. You know, he tragically passed away, 10 years ago, and I miss him. He was tough, though. Don't think he was just, easygoing. Like, he was tough. And as he gave the cool toolkit away and he thought he was going to compete, he was going to compete every inch of it and not give 1 inch back, but recognizing that what I'm giving you is something to help you be successful. And so in football, those are the truths that kind of have resonated with me in every aspect of my life. And so as I give them to you, you might say, hey, Steve, nice try, but that's failed. I just know that whatever you say to me back, whatever mitigation you give me back on why none of this works, I know that it does. Because in the end, we know that the Everest of football is the Super Bowl. The Everest in your lives, I know you have them. There's dreams and plans. And your dad is kind of, my dad is in you as well, because I think everybody has dreams. And they're not always the most likely of scenarios. And in football, that's the Super Bowl. It's a very unlikely scenario. It's very rare. A lot of teams never get there. And so when you do, it's worth it. The dream is worth it. And let me give a quick example. So it's the day before our Super Bowl, the fifth one, in 1994. And we're in Miami. We're playing the San Diego Chargers, and it's the night before the game. And the PR director, Rodney Knox, knocks on my hotel door, and he comes in and says, Steve, I have this piece of paper here. It's a contract with the Disney company. They want to have you for $2,500 if you sign it. Tomorrow, if you're the MVP of the game, after the game, you yell into the camera, now that I'm MVP of the Super Bowl, what are you going to do? And you yell, I'm going to Disneyland, right? You guys, well, Disney World because you guys are in the East, right? Sorry, California. But that was the thing. That's the promotion. And I thought to myself, that's cool. That would be great. That's like being on the Wheaties box. That'd be amazing. The next day, I was the MVP of the game. After the game, Rodney Knox came running over. Steve, remember the thing yesterday for $2,500, you signed it, but you didn't read it because you went to law school and you never read it. You're going to now yell into the camera, I'm going to Disneyland. And we did it. It was awesome. And I went running into the locker room, and the rest of the night was just a blissful, joyful blur until about 2:30 in the morning when Rodney came up to me, we were excited, we were partying, it was fun, and he says, oh, by the way, it's not a metaphor. Like, you're going to Disneyland, right? And I go, oh, I did not know that. All right, well, cool, because I love Disney, so that's great. And he goes, well, it's tomorrow. I'm like, tomorrow? How's it possible tomorrow? Because we're in Miami, San Francisco, the parade. I'm like, that's not possible. He goes, oh, crap, it's 2:30 in the morning. I mean, tonight. Well, that morning at 6 a.m., we were on the plane back to San Francisco. They had a little thing. And that night, I'm in Anaheim, in front of the castle. I mean, it was big. It was a moment to be remembered. There was a gold and red streamers for the 49er colors on top of a float. The band, you didn't know there's a Disneyland band. There's a band. They were playing. The place was packed with people that were so excited about the Super Bowl. And on the side of the little float, it said, Steve Young, Super Bowl MVP. And on top of the float was me and the great Mickey Mouse. We were kings. And we went down Main Street, and people cheered and went crazy. And I remember people yelling at me, Steve, you're the man, you're the greatest, Joe's nothing, it's everybody, it's your time, you're the best. And for 4 minutes, because Main Street's shorter than you think, for 4 minutes, I lost my mind. I'd climbed my Everest, this was the moment, and it was all worth it. Like the dream came true, and I yelled back, I am the man. You're right, Joe's nothing, I'm the king, Like for 4 minutes, I lost my mind. And then all of a sudden, it was time to go backstage. The band stopped playing. The float turned to go backstage. And I'm like, no, turn around, go back. Let's do some laps. This is it. This is the moment we've been waiting for. And so it gets quiet. And down on the stoop, 2 little kids, probably 6 and 8, dressed exactly alike, like moms at Disneyland do. In case, they got a purple top and a yellow pants, so if they get lost, they can see him, right? So the 6 and 8-year-old are sitting there, and the 6-year-old, the younger kid, looks up, it's quiet, he says, Mickey Mouse. He sees Mickey Mouse standing next to me. And he starts to charge the stage like Mickey Mouse. And then his older brother grabs him by the shirt, pulls him back and says, "You can't get near him. The big guy won't let you." Lie detector, I don't think I did yell at him. I'm not sure, though, because I was in this euphoric moment, but it's possible. I said, "Kid, check the sign. Of all the times I am not Mickey Mouse's bodyguard, it is right now. And this is not over, and I'm not coming back from the mountaintop yet. This is not over. See the sign." And I remember thinking, dang, it was great. And the dreams are awesome, and they're worth it. And keep them. But just know it's 4 minutes, right? Because that's about how, when you go to Everest, and you're up there with no air, and you got your flag and your camera, you've hauled up to 29,000 feet, you're there about 4 minutes, right? The flag, the camera, and we're back. It's the truth. It's another truth I'm going to give you. Whatever dream it is, it's 4 minutes long, all right? But it is worth it, absolutely. But then I remember thinking to myself as we went backstage, it's back to work. And that's what happened. You go back to work and journey for another one. And I never did get back. As much as I dreamed about getting back, I never did. So I relish those moments. I've emptied the tank for everything I've known in football, There's a ton more that is funny and interesting from a human behavior standpoint, but foundationally for how it kind of delivers truth to my life, that's kind of what football did for me. And I'm so grateful for the few folks that did unique things to help me have a chance to see it in a better light. And I do use these principles in private equity. I told Mo that I would be welcome to some questions, and if you have any, we have a few minutes. I'm suspecting I didn't talk. Well, I talked too long, but we have a couple minutes, I'm sure. If you want to, if not, you could just kick me off. But it's fun to be in Toronto. I love. There are many Canadians in the U.S., as you know. Many of them are my friends, and they are all absolutely, amazingly super nice. Like the stereotype is true. Like, I don't get it. Like, it's like amazing. Some of my best friends. And so coming to Toronto, they're like, "Oh, okay, when you're in Toronto, this is what you got to do." I'm like, I'm not going to be there that long, but I have a ton of friends that actually wanted to come in my baggage to try to see, show me the place and show me what's going on. And so it's, and we actually own businesses here in Toronto. Dealer FX is just north of here. And we've had a lot of success in finding entrepreneurs in the Toronto area. So it's fun to be back and to be here for a few minutes. But if you have a couple questions for me, I'll take them. If not, you're bored to tears, it's fine. I can get off. Mo, you don't have to ask a question, Mo.
I'm going to ask you a question.
No, you don't have to.
No,
it's fine.
It's not because I feel bad, because I'm generally interested. What's the plan?
Which plan are you referring to?
Like,
we're back to my marriage, we're talking my kids, we're talking about business. Like, there's a lot of plans, not many dreams at this point. I've lost all my dreams. I'm too old.
And just one thing I should ask is, you've been a deeply spiritual person your entire life. Has that played a role in the drive that you've had throughout your career?
Yeah, no, everybody needs a North Star. And for me, that's that spiritual connection, that prayerful kind of hope and faith that comes with it is an energy for me. It's like and I think a North Star always kind of keeps you moving in a direction that you have purpose and usefulness in my own heart. So I think and then when things are tough, I mean, I was telling a friend who is having a tough time right now how at one point in 1991 when I was trying to replace Joe Montana, it was now finally my time. And Joe he was the king. I mean, when I say the king, he'd been to 4 Super Bowls and was the MVP. And I started to play, and I noticed when I threw an interception, everyone would say, "Well, Joe didn't do that." I'm like, "Yes, he did. He threw an interception." "Oh, no, he didn't." And then I'd lose a game, and people would say, "Well, Joe never did that." I'm like, "He lost the game. Here's the record." Like, "No, he didn't." Like, everyone remembered perfection. Like, they remembered it all. Like, it was just, and everything was my fault. And it felt like that. In fact, in October of 1991, the U.S. had, and I think Canada came along for the Gulf War, and it would have been declared in October of 1991. And in the San Francisco Chronicle, on the top of the front page, there was huge headlines: "The Gulf War, it's Steve Young's fault." Super funny, right? Not so funny, right? Because it was that's how embedded it was in the culture of the San Francisco area, that was actually, they thought that was an interesting kind of funny headline. But that was my life. And dealing with that, I remember at one point at the bottom of the pit, at the bottom of the pit when I was depressed and you ever been depressed? Hopefully you haven't, when you just, the glimmer of the light of the first morning and you wake up at the start, you're like, oh no, this is going to be a brutal day and you can't hardly get through them. I had a bunch of those trying to replace Joe Montana. And I finally realized, and I have a longer story here, but I finally realized you can't. You don't. You shouldn't. In fact, there's no way to do that. And so to recognize that, look, just be yourself. You hear that all the time, but seek your own place and quit trying to be somebody else. And that was it seems obvious to all of you, but I spent years trying to be just like him. And then when I couldn't, I felt this incredible sense of failure, incredible sense of weight. And switching that on its head, and it's a long story I had with the great Steve Covey. Do you guys remember Steve Covey, the 7 Habits guy? Some of you older folks will remember him. I had a run-in with him, and he changed everything. He showed me that I was looking at it all wrong, and that really was the beginning of 1992 when I was the MVP of the NFL. And so it's like, how did that happen? It happened because of the bright perspective. And I think you go back to your North Star. A lot of my North Star, my faith and my hope and my sense of connection to God is really kind of that North Star, that in those deepest, darkest moments, you're like, no, I got somewhere to go. I got somewhere to do. I got somewhere to be. And I think that's super helpful.
Well, first of all, thank God you're not emulating Joe Montana anymore, because he's also in the investing business, but Steve has been infinitely more successful.
No, don't say.
And I'm going to ask Joe to come back and prove that.
What are you trying to tell me? I'm great? Oh, no. He's doing great too. He does venture stuff. A bunch of us, and I know I'm boring you to tears, but we moved to San Francisco from the Redwood City where we practiced to Santa Clara, where the stadium is today, in the middle of Silicon Valley. In 1987, the city of Santa Clara gave the 49ers the land because there was nothing down there. Like, come down here, maybe we can generate some interest in business down here. In 1987, 1991, Silicon Valley had exploded. And now it is the Mecca of technology, right where the 49ers are. And so by 1995, we realized, oh my gosh, there's a lot of stuff going on. I could throw a bad pass and hit John Chambers in the head. It's like, we got to focus. And so we started to trade access to the locker room for some of the venture guys that were super excited about the 49ers and all our success and wanted to get to know us. And like, hey, come in the locker room, bring your family, bring your kids. And then in return, we'd like, $100,000 of everything you do. Right? I'm not joking. And then we'd parse it out amongst all of us, and we'd all take 15 or 10 or whatever. And over a 3 years, we had like this tremendous portfolio of investments and I still remember Doug Leone at Sequoia when we'd have the weekly call. Doug, what do you got? And he'd say, and he'd name some things. And one time, clear as day, because we were always following it, because we're dumb. I shouldn't say that. We were smart athletes trying to figure stuff out, and here he was telling us all these cool things that are going on in technology right in 1994, 95. And I remember him clear as day saying, "Yeah, Google, it's another search engine. Let's leave that one behind." I could have had $10,000 in Google day one. We did get into VA Linux. VA Linux was the biggest one-day, even to this day, record holder for the biggest gain in a public offering in the first day. And it was a practice day on a Thursday. And our investment at $10,000 had turned into, at the time it went public, at about $1.5 million. And so we're kings, we're the greatest. And so out at practice, they kept having the board for practice. They usually have a little dry erase board where they put the play up that the team was going to run, so everyone else who's watching could see what was going on and they could keep track. And so the equipment manager who does the dry erase board was putting an ongoing value of VA Linux throughout practice. And by the end of practice, our stake was worth $8 million. And it was going up, and we're cheering, and they're like, "You guys are the kings, they're great." And then we're so dumb, we didn't know how to collar it. We just rode it into the ground the next 6 months. So, That was before I was an expert.
Right.
Anyway, too much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please
Thanks so
give a
much,
round of
everybody.
applause to Steve. Steve, don't go anywhere. Just 1 second before you run off. So, firstly, that was amazing. Thank you. Profound thanks. And also, I just wanted to point out, Steve actually was in Europe. He flew all the way back from Europe just for this, and he's getting on a flight, and he's heading back. So we are incredibly grateful. Sick Kids, the organization, and all of us here are incredibly grateful. We do have a small token of our appreciation.
No,
we
need.
had a Joe Montana stamp minted, and
No, by the way, we are still, over the years, it was awkward with Joe. It was always difficult, but we never argued. We never had a cross word, ever. And so over the years, we actually laugh about it now. And, I tell these jokes because we're actually, at this point, we're friends. And that tells you that over the years, even the most awkward relationships can be profitable. And I didn't finish my story. He's in in venture capital with his kids and does a very nice job. So good for him.
So here's your gift. There's a donation that was given in your honor to Sick Kids.
Oh,
and
beautiful.
one last
Thank
dream
you.
I'm going to fulfill for you. You've always dreamed of having a picture with me on your mantle.
I did, Mo.
I want to fulfill that dream right now.